There we go, recording it.
You got your mic on?
Yep, the mic is on. Okay, good evening everyone. Thanks for coming out on a hot Canadian... It's still spring, so... Till tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right.
It's an early start, so I've got the two handouts on the table at the back if you haven't already got them. So tonight my Bible lesson for my Bible college course. This is my second and last Bible lesson, and then we'll try sermons next month. It's part of my intention. And so the Bible lesson tonight is based on Acts 27 verse 39 to chapter 28 verse 10. And we're talking tonight on Paul's healing revival on the island of Malta in the Mediterranean. So I did say this, we did say on Saturday, Sunday, read 27, 28, and that will give you the context of the shipwreck and then what happened afterwards. So my introduction here is the Apostle Paul is a prisoner on a Roman ship that is in a massive storm. The storm is sinking the boat basically, and over a period of at least 14 days he's on this. You would have read it in Acts 27. He's on the ship, and there's a storm comes, and there's big trouble, and there's no life rafts. It's a wooden ship, 2,000 years ago, and it's sink or swim. And the Apostle Paul is on the ship because he is on the way to Rome, the capital of the Roman Empire, and he's on his way as a prisoner because he is going to testify before the Roman Emperor about Christianity, about the message of Jesus, and that's why he's on the prison ship as a prisoner. And there's 276 people on board this ship, and this whole passage talks about he survives the shipwreck, which is a miracle in itself. And then Paul and all of the people, so all the people survive the shipwreck, and they all end up on this distant island called Malta. And they are significantly off course on their route to Rome. And so tonight we can learn, is there hope for us if we end up in an unlikely place? Paul was not intending to land on Malta. In fact, he didn't actually land on Malta. He either swam to it or he washed up on it. And we also see in this passage, Paul survives being bitten by a poisonous snake, or in some translations would say a viper snake. And it latches onto his hand. So he comes off the ship. He survives the shipwreck. He comes off the boat because the soldiers wanted to kill him because you don't want any of the prisoners to escape. So he survives that. He survives the shipwreck, and then he gets bitten by the snake. Well, it latches onto his hand, it won't let go. So he has quite an adventure, and we can learn from this passage about overcoming evil when we look at the snake. And lastly, to get your attention, there is a great healing revival on the island of Malta. we can learn from this passage about having a healing revival. Because people in Malta, they haven't heard about Christianity, and out comes Apostle Paul preaching on the island, and everyone gets healed. And we'll look at this, and in the Bible study, we'll work through the passage, and I'll ask some questions, and I'll give you a list of questions, and you can give me some answers, and we'll record it for my assignment. So I need your participation. So the context, as I said earlier, was in chapter 27, and I've given you the handout with the passages on it. We can actually start off with verse 6, which isn't on your handout there, but basically they board a ship heading to Rome, and they're having trouble getting there because of the time of year, and because in those days the ships they didn't have diesel motors. It was all based on where the wind was blowing, and they put out the sails, and so you need to catch the right winds to get to where you want to go. And during the course of the year, the winds change, and this is partly why they got into trouble. And they also had oars, but it's really focused on the wind. And we can see in verse 9, which is on your handout, now when much time had spent and sailing was now dangerous because the fast was already over, which is the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, Paul advised them, "Men, I perceive that this voyage will end with disaster and much loss, not only of the cargo and the ship, but also of our lives." Nevertheless, the centurion Julius was more persuaded by the helmsman and the owner of the ship than by the things spoken by Paul. So the centurion, the soldier Julius, who's in charge of getting Paul to Rome, they're in a difficult time of the year to go sailing to Rome, and he asked the owner of the ship, and he asked basically the captain, "Can we still go?" And they say yes. And Paul, the apostle, says it's not a great idea. And they decide to go with the captain rather than the man of God, and off they went. Now we see in verse 9 and 27. Now, when much time had been spent, and sailing was now dangerous because the fast was already over. No, sorry, I already read that. Verse 21. But after a long abstinence of food, because they're all fasting there and wondering how much time they're going to be out in the storm, and are they going to run out of food, and also looking at lightening the load of the ship and throwing things overboard, Paul stood in the midst of them and said, "Men, you should have listened to me. I told you so, and not have sailed from Crete and incurred this disaster and loss. But now I urge you to take heart, for there be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship." So the ship is going to be lost, but all 276 people are going to make it, and they don't have life jackets, and not all of them can swim. "And for there stood by me this night an angel of the God to whom I belong and whom I serve, saying, 'Do not be afraid, Paul. You must be brought before Caesar, and indeed God has granted you all those who sail with you. Therefore take heart, men, for I believe that it will be God that will be just as it was told to me.'" And so that's a whole lot of context. And Paul said, "Don't go," but they didn't want to listen to Paul. He was an apostle, but the Roman Empire was not Christian at this stage. and also Paul was a prisoner, so they didn't take his advice. It was, I told you so. But he said, the angel of God showed up to me, and we're going to make it, and believe. And there's a whole lot of other verses in this passage that talk about what he did, and Paul broke bread with them and encouraged them. But the passage that my questions will be based on tonight starts at verse 39, when Paul is shipwrecked on Malta. Then we move across to his ministry on the island of Malta. So I'll just read this passage and then I'll answer some questions. So you can read it as I talk and look carefully at it, because I'll have those questions. So shipwrecked on Malta. So when it was day, they did not recognize the land. So the ship is falling apart here, and they see there's an island that after drifting along the ocean, they hit an island, which is a miracle in itself, because it's hit and miss whether you're going to hit land or not. You could keep going and going and going and not hit any land. So they observed a bay with a beach, onto which they planned to run the ship aground if possible. And they let go of the anchors and let them into the sea. So at that point, the ship has no anchors. You can't stop the ship. It's going to keep floating. So you can't stop. And once you lose those anchors, that's it. Unless they can find another anchor, they wouldn't have another anchor. So meanwhile, loosing the rudder ropes, they hoisted the mainsail to the wind and made for the shore. But striking a place where two seas met, they ran the ship aground, and the prow stuck fast and remained immovable. So the boat is stuck now. It's stuck offshore an island. You can't move it. And the stern was being broken up by the violence of the waves. So at this point, the ship is literally falling apart. And so they can see that you're going to have to leave the ship. It doesn't say how far off the island it was, but it was a good distance. Now, I come from New Zealand, so we're used to beaches, and we have I'm not sure if you see it in this country, we have a program called Piha Rescue. It's our most dangerous surfing beach in New Zealand. And we have big waves on that side of New Zealand, on the west coast, that come off from Australia. And every day on that program you see people nearly drowning, and we have the rescue helicopter come out and rescue them. It's incredible. People still go to the beach, but it's a dangerous beach. Okay, so the soldiers' plan was to kill the prisoners lest any of them should swim away and escape, because in those days, if the Roman soldier loses a prisoner, then he has to forfeit his life because he lost the prisoner. But the centurion, Julius, wanting to save Paul, because he's got to take him to Caesar. And so the Roman Emperor Caesar would say, where's Paul gone? What did you do to him? I have an audience coming out with him. So the centurion basically said to the soldiers, you're not going to kill the prisoners. And he commanded those who could swim to jump overboard first and get to land, and the rest, some on boards and some on parts of the ship, jumped into the water and made the best for it. And so it was that they all escaped safely to land. It doesn't tell us what the distance to the beach was or how long it took them, but it would have taken them a while. So they get to the land. So all 276 of them survived. None of them drowned. And this comes back to the angel saying, God has granted that all of those who are on the ship will survive, which was a miracle in itself. Then Paul's ministry on Malta. Now when they had escaped the ship, they found out that the island they were on was called Malta. So they had drifted onto this island. And you can think also TV programs, you've seen Survivor on the island, and Robinson Crusoe, and all these islands. Anyway, they're on Malta a long, long time ago. And the islanders, depending on your translation there, some would say natives. What they're basically saying is they're non-Greeks. So they are the islanders, they're non-Greeks. So they showed us unusual kindness, for they kindled a fire and made us all welcome. So they're very cold. Was it cold? Cold. They had no wetsuits. And it was near the winter time, I believe. So they made us all welcome, and because of the rain that was falling, because of the cold. But when Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and laid them on the fire, a viper snake came out because of the heat and fastened on his hand. And so when the islanders saw the creature hanging from his hand, they said to one another, "No doubt, this man is a murderer, whom though he had escaped the sea, yet justice does not allow him to live." So he survived the sea, but it wasn't good enough. He's done something wrong. That's why the snake has got him. But Paul shook off the snake into the fire and suffered no harm. However, they were still watching, expecting him to swell up or suddenly fall down dead because it was a poisonous snake. But after they looked for a long time and saw no harm had come to them, they changed their minds and said that he was a god. So now they think he's a god because he's survived the snake bite. This is very unusual. He's supposed to be dead by now. And he's still alive. And then in that region there was an estate of the leading citizen of the island, whose name was Publius. So Publius was a Roman, and he was likely the leading Roman citizen. Well, he was the leading citizen, but he was likely the Roman governor or the administrative official. So he received us and entertained us courteously for 3 days. So he entertained the whole ship. There's 276 of them. So he obviously has some wealth. And then it happened that Father Publius lay sick of a fever and dysentery. So he's very, very sick. And then Paul went into him and prayed, and he laid his hands on him and healed him. And so when this was done, the rest of those on the island with diseases also came and were healed. And they also honoured us in many ways, and when we departed, they provided such things as were necessary. And in the next verse we'll talk about how they were on the island for about 3 months, because they had to wait for the ship to be repaired, or no, they got another ship. But they were way, way off course. So this is a bit of an unusual and strange story. So many things happened there. And so I have some questions tonight, and that's on the handout. I've got there, I've marked the questions at the top. Depending on time, we may go through most of them or all of them, or that's how we go. And so the questions there start at verse 39, so I've given you the handout as well, so if you follow me on verse 39. So the first question was, how did Paul's how did Paul's ship sink? I was trying to catch you out there, right? It got stuck in the storm? Yeah.
Ran aground.
Yep, ran aground.
Beat up by the waves.
Beat up by the waves, yep. Yep. So verse 41, sorry. So the ship ran aground, it got stuck, and at that point there's no point. And they lost the anchors. But when it got stuck on the rocks, that's when the ship started to break up. And so the waves were so strong that they started immediately breaking up the boat. Okay, so the next question, number 2, is who wanted to kill Paul and why?
Roman soldiers did, because they didn't want to lose any prisoners, so they were going to kill them all rather than risk having someone escape.
It's true, correct. Full marks. Question 3. Why was Paul's life spared during the shipwreck? So the ship at this point is stuck.
The Roman centurion who was on board wanted to save Paul from all the soldiers.
Yeah, it's true. And so, why do you think Julius the centurion wanted to save Paul? Same as that. There's a little bit to this question here.
It was prophecy a week before that Paul would speak before kings and governors and stuff.
Yeah.
And that prophecy hadn't been fulfilled, so God used the centurion to bring about what his will was.
Yeah.
That's not a
Caesar.
Yeah.
Probably think he recognized the presence of God on him too.
Yeah.
He was different and special.
So this story really talks, this whole episode really talks about God's sovereignty. So God's sovereign, and then he used Julius the centurion, who was an authority of all the prisoners. He used centurion, even though Julius the centurion wasn't necessarily a Christian. He used Julius to say no. And it goes back to that angel who said everyone's going to be safe. But you can see here, this is an example of God's sovereignty at play, that it overruled what would have normally happened. So all those answers were good, yeah. Question 4. Oh, this is an easy question. Where did Paul wash up on? What was the name of the island? Malta. And so Paul wasn't expecting to land on Malta. Though we can see that in the I'll go back to the contextual verse. Chapter 27, verse 26. However, we must run aground on a certain island. So he knew at that point he was going to run aground on a certain island. He didn't know the name of the island because there's lots of islands. But he knew that he was going to, from that vision or encounter with the angel at night when the boat was in the storm for a long time. And a lot of the story sort of reminds me of Jonah on the boat, who's Jonah had the same had a similar issue, being stuck on a boat in the big storm. But we see at verse 26 how we must run aground on a certain island. And in fact, think of that verse for some of the other questions at the end. And we can also look at this and think, well, have we ever ended up in an unlikely place in our lives? Okay.
Here doesn't sound
yeah, even myself, I wonder, why I came to Saskatoon, so unlikely compared to New Zealand, so far away. No beach, no mountains, so I can enjoy the snow, minus 40. But this really shows, Paul wasn't expecting to land on Malta. Although he knew by foreknowledge that he was going to end up on an island. He didn't know which island it was. Okay, so then we move along the passage in the story. And we've got quite a few questions about the episode when the viper snake came and bit Paul. And this will help us look closely at this passage. So the first question is, why did the snake actually bite Paul? What did he do?
Well, it was cold, so that snakes are cold-blooded, so they would be lethargic.
Yeah.
So when he was gathering wood, he probably gathered up the steak and put it in the fire. The snake warmed up, woke up, and didn't like it and bit him.
Yes, yeah. So isn't it unusual, because reading the passage, it's really talking about it appears that the snake was in the bundle of the sticks. And so he picked up the whole pile of sticks. He didn't see there was a snake in it.
Mm-hmm.
He put it near the fire, started putting the sticks in the fire, and lo and behold, out comes this snake. And in New Zealand we don't have any snakes. Quite happy about that, but Australia they do.
Oh, okay.
They have snakes, they have all sorts of nasty creatures. But in Australia, you've got to be careful where you walk because you could have a snake in there somewhere. And what you disturb, because out could come a snake. But so that's what happened to Paul, is out came a snake. And I was reading a commentary, and there was no snakes there at the Malta at the moment, but a long time ago there were snakes. So why did the islanders think the viper bit Paul? Because he had sinned, yeah.
Murderer.
Because they thought he was a murderer. Yeah. Any other judgment? Yeah.
He was saved from sea.
Yeah.
So the snake bite.
Yeah. That's right, because it's talking there about justice has not let him live. And so this is their understanding of the judicial system. Because it's all about, in those days, they're a little superstitious, right? And it's sort of fate, He was the storm should have killed him because he was a murderer. I don't know why they thought they thought he was a murderer because the snake got him, and they thought he must have killed someone. And so they're thinking that they're probably thinking along the lines of curses and superstition, and out comes the snake to bite him.
Kind of the same today, though. People, something happens to somebody, and they're, I wonder what they did wrong. And it's kind of a human nature.
That's right. And so they saw the snake as being the instrument of justice. That a higher power or whatever used the snake to try and kill him. To finish the job. Because the islanders would have thought it's very unusual they survived the shipwreck, all of them. And it's very unusual a snake would bite someone like that, and then, that's their thinking. Question 7. What did Paul do when the snake bit him? Shook him off. Shook him off. So the snake didn't just bite him and then retract. It latched on and wouldn't let go. So it's very strange. Because most snakes would just bite you and watch you, but this type of snake latches on and won't let go. So he shook the hanging viper, this is verse 5, and he shook it into the fire. But notice verse 6, they're watching Paul to see if he's going to die, because they're expecting him to die, and they're wondering what's happened when he doesn't die. So, the side note is as Paul is immune to the venom of the snake. Paul doesn't need healing. It's the power of God in him is protected him from the poison. So he suffers no ill effects.